Welcome to the Out and About Town Show on Chop FM 102.7. With me in the studio, back by popular demand, the one, the only, the History Hound, aka Richard McLeod. Hello, Richard.
How you doing, Brad?
And you are back by popular demand, I would like to say.
With who? I'd be interested to know that. But
Well, we can't reveal these sources right now because it is radio.
oh, of course.
Well, we were talking off the mic before we get started the interview, Richard. We were talking off the mic about how close I would say communication is now between people with the digital age, and we were mentioning that when we both worked, how the camaraderie ship between the workers and the people it's sort of gelled together, made for an easy day. How do you find what you do now in the digital age? Do you find people a little hard to talk to or communicate?
Well, Brad, I'm fairly lucky in the sense that I do the walks and I do the presentations, so that gives me an opportunity to get out and actually talk to people as opposed to over Facebook or like we're doing now. So I enjoy that part of it. I write the articles, which is, I guess, connection in a sense, particularly when you get feedback from your article. But I much prefer the in-person part of it. The difficulty, of course, is still not fully acceptable for people to meet, in a group, and that's too bad because I haven't been doing as many presentations as I used to do. I used to do, probably about 10 a month, and now I'm down to 2 or 3 a month, I guess. Some months are more than others. And of course, the walks, we do walks all the time. So, I get to talk to people. I love to talk to people. You may have figured that out.
Which brings me to my next question. We'll talk about the walk in the second half of the show, the walk for in from the cold. But you were telling me off the mic that you had a virtual walk once, and you had quite an audience for the virtual walk. You think that is the way to go, combined with the natural walk?
Well, to be honest with you, I didn't really like the virtual walk for the reasons that we talked about just a few minutes ago. It was a necessity. We needed to raise money. I came up with the idea that I would walk around town with a mic and record my walk, not only the audio but the video as well. And then we had this virtual walk. We did get a lot of people. A lot of people found it more convenient, I think. Particularly a lot of older people who don't particularly want to walk in February. So it worked out that way. The most important thing, of course, is that we raised a considerable amount of money for in from the cold, which is, the goal of doing all this. So, so it turned out very well. I would think we probably, all told, had about 80 people.
Wow.
Physically, I couldn't handle 80 people, all at one time. So it worked out, fairly well. I think people enjoyed it. To say some people like, doing it virtually. They don't really want to get out into the elements. I like getting out and meeting people. And the elements, I complain a lot. I'm typical Canadian. I complain a lot about the weather. I can't say that, I would miss it if I couldn't get out. And I did, for virtually for 2 years, we were stuck in the house or someplace. So, and we didn't get out into the weather, and I kind of missed that.
What got you involved in research and history for Newmarket and the surrounding area, Richard? What spurred your interest to actually do what you do?
Well, I guess I have to give a shout out to a couple of people. My interest goes way back to when I was a child, but I guess really it started in 1974. In 1974, I had the good fortune that my uncle, George Loosby, took me under his wing, and I helped him along with his projects and gain confidence. As well, I used to sit and read Terry Carter's articles in the Newmarket era, and I thought to myself, man, this guy is cool. I mean, he knows all about Newmarket history. I realized very early that, had it not been for people like my Uncle George, like Mr. Millard, like Mr. Carter, our history would have died. And so I thought to myself, well, this is a real interest and I'd love to do this. And even though I had a real life, so to speak, in the sense that, I had a job and, profession and everything, I still was able to do this on a part-time basis. And of course, since I retired, it's become a full-time occupation.
Now, from your latest article, which really amazed me, surrounding Newmarket, I say Sharon and Queensville, there are little hamlets. Can you tell listeners out there what exactly is a hamlet and how were the hamlets governed? Were they not governed by reeves?
No, a hamlet is the lowest level of community. Generally, a hamlet was based around some major industry or some religious group. And it was just a loose collection of farms and people living in an area. In order to move to a system of elected government, you need to incorporate. And the reason I did the articles is that there were a lot of really viable communities surrounding us. Small communities, but they all were quite really thriving. And through circumstances, time passing, I guess social situations changing with jobs moving away, this sort of thing. Those hamlets became smaller and smaller. Now, many of them, like around Newmarket, you mentioned Newmarket, so I'll mention Armitage. Armitage was a viable community, and it now is part of Newmarket. It was incorporated in Newmarket, which is what happened to a lot of these hamlets. They became incorporated into larger centers, and little by little, and they disappeared. So I wanted to do a series of articles to bring people's attention to the fact that the physical evidence that these places existed is still there. And so, when they're out and they're looking for something to do, they can get in their car and go and check out a lot of these places because they're very, very interesting, and the stories of their establishment are absolutely fascinating.
Is that article out now in the latest Newmarket Today?
Well, we did King Township and we did Whitchurch Township. We're currently doing East Gwillimbury Township, and next year we hope to do Georgina, and we hope to do Bradford, West Gwillimbury.
Oh, you got your plate full of hamlets, I see there. You got
a lot of hamlets. Well, it's amazing how many there were. In some places, every mile and a quarter, there was another community separate from the other community.
Can you recall, with all this hamlets and formation of towns earlier on in history, can you recall who the first mayor of Newmarket was? And was there a nominated council yet in the works?
Well, our first mayor was William Kane, who owned the Kane Woodworking. As you probably, and we've talked about this on the program before, Newmarket incorporated into a village in 1857. By becoming a village, that gave them the ability to elect a reeve, a deputy reeve, and the skeleton of a council, I guess you would say. And then very shortly after that, they incorporated into becoming a town. I think that the vision always was that they would become a town, so it wasn't very long after that we became a town. So by the 1880s, we were a town and we're bustling. Now, when you become a town, then you get a far larger, I guess you'd say, political structure. You have a mayor, you have a deputy mayor. In most cases, you retained your reeve, but then you had a council. A lot of people forget, even though we're, a huge community, we're still a town. So if you want to know what the political structure is for a town, take a look at the way things are now.
Well, one of the meeting places for people I would say early on in history was the library. And in your research, when was the first library erected? Because I just recently went by Aurora and they did massive renovations to the Aurora Public Library. I've yet to go in, which I might do today. It's just amazing. And you wouldn't think that many people use the library now in the age of digital technology.
Well, boy, you got a couple of comments there to respond to. First of all, the library system, not only in Newmarket, but in most places, started off as a private enterprise. It was a private library, usually associated with churches or community organizations. That was the case in Newmarket. There were a number of organizations that sponsored the library. The library really did not become a viable public enterprise until after the turn of the century. And the reason for that was that education, it was considered that the drawing line between classes was basically, could you read? And if you could read, did you have access to things to read? And so the public library, a lot of people can't believe it, but the public library wasn't always public. It was private. It was kept going by sponsorship by organizations or churches. And obviously, too, that would be a problem because the private library, then they choose what books, what there is to read, which we all are, I think, probably against censorship. Now, your second question is, why do people still go to the library? And I think most people would agree with me that there's still nothing like reading a physical book. A lot of people, I write these articles, and I could tell you for a fact, people are always saying to me, could I get a hard copy? Because I find it very difficult to read, my articles online, or they choose to have something in their hands. So no, I don't think you'll ever see the library disappear. The other thing too you have to remember is that the library is far more than a place to get books. Library now is a center for seminars. I do presentations at the library. It's an opportunity for people to learn to read. It's a gathering place, a social gathering place for people. So no, I don't think it'll ever disappear. Although I know there are, particularly politicians who say, well, we could probably save a lot of money if we get rid of a physical library and convince everybody to get their information online.
Well, if you ever get a chance, which I'm probably going to do today, I'm going to take a little jaunt down to Aurora Public Library, and it's really amazing looking from the outside what they've done, and I just can't believe they put that much money into the library that the people hardly use. But as you pointed out, people really look for a place to gather and meet and catch up on things, and free internet. How can you beat that? Well,
it's funny because, you made a very good point. A lot of people believe that nobody goes to the library, and yet, I live in Newmarket, and I can tell you that when I go to the library, it's usually full. And it's quite a bustling place, with all of the activities that are going on. When I do my presentations, my historical presentations, my problem is always trying to find space for more people because, I don't have any problems in drawing, a lot of people to the library for the presentations. And a lot of people look to the library in their community for a source of this sort of thing. So, I'm not so sure that I haven't seen any figures that indicate that people don't go to the library anymore.
Well, in every time
I should mention too. I think it's important to mention. One of the problems that we have in our society now is, I guess you would say, the truth of what we read online. So I think that a lot of people tend to believe that things that you can hold, that you can get at the library is believable, and because anybody could post on the internet. I mean, you could post that the world was created in 1652 and it was established by you, and there would be probably millions of people who would buy that because it's online. It must be true if it's online.
It must be. Well, before we go to break, I got another question. With every town going through its own transformation period, what about fire hall? Do you remember when the first fire hall was erected in Newmarket?
Well, obviously the fire department here in Newmarket, like most places, started as a volunteer, location. The first fire hall that we built here was on Main Street. I guess it's now become a brewery, but it was at the corner of Millard and Main Street. And it's not there was one located there. It was taken down in the 1950s, and the one that you see there actually just dates from the 1950s. It's not an old building at all, but that was where the initial one was. I've written articles on it. Fire prevention was a big problem for us. It seems to me that Newmarket's idea of rezoning was to have a whole section of the town burned down. Main Street, as I've said repeatedly, people, very nicely say, well, Main Street dates back to our founding. Well, we've always had a Main Street. We've had so many fires that there's very little left of the original Main Street. And the funny thing is that the fires all seem to be on the east side of the street. The reason being, people say, well, why would that be? It's because the people on the west side got smart. They as soon as they could, they started building with brick. Whereas the people on the other side, on the east side, would rebuild in wood. And unfortunately, wood burns. And particularly if your heating in your building is an open hearth and you have a wooden building, boy, I'll tell you, I wouldn't want to have to pay the dues to get fire insurance for that.
On that note, Richard, we'll be coming right back and talk a little bit more about more interesting historical facts, as well as your scheduled walk for the in from the cold. You're listening to CHOP FM 102.7 and the Out and About Town show. Stay tuned. We will be right back with my very special guest, the History Hound, a.k.a. Richard McLeod. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Out and About Town show on CHOP FM 102.7. My name is Brad Joseph, and I'm here with a.k.a. Richard McLeod. Welcome back, Richard.
How you doing, Brad?
Well, I see around this time there was an annual Santa Claus parade in Newmarket that's already gone. Do you remember when the first Santa Claus parade came to town?
Well, our first Santa Claus parade officially was 1910. But,
Wow.
In 1905, and this is the fact that I think a lot of people don't realize, is that in 1905 was the first Eaton Santa Claus parade in Toronto. And the float that was used in that parade was actually built here in Newmarket at the Kane woodworking factory. And so really, once it was built, and it was a log cabin with Santa Claus sitting on top of it, they got the idea that what they would do is that they would cart it around Newmarket before they put it on the train to go to Toronto. So technically, I guess you'd say we had a little taste of the Santa Claus parade back in 1905 when the Kane company made the first float for the Eaton's parade. It was then put onto the train on a flatbed car and taken to Toronto.
Well, as I strolled down Main Street there the other day, I noticed the structure's been sitting there for a while, the old clock tower, and it's been converted to what they call a boutique hotel.
Mm-hmm.
Now, can you give us a bit of a rundown on the old clock tower? What in the beginning was it used for? I know now there's expected some sort of a boutique hotel, and how they're going to pull that off is beyond me, but I guess there's like a wait and see process.
Well, you're a real naysayer. Well, obviously, they call it the clock tower. The clock tower name comes from long after the post office closed. It was originally our post office. It was built. They started building it in 1914. It was completed in 1915. it was built to a classic design, but unfortunately, a lot of those post offices are gone now, and so the one that we had was because it was a classic design, and because it was, a lot of people don't realize the post office was the center of the town. I mean, before we had home delivery, every day you would go down and meet your neighbors and pick up your mail, and so this is where you would gossip. Now I guess it's the coffee shops. So it was the post office, and it was the post office for a long time. A gentleman named Mac Davis took over the building, and he turned it into a seniors residence, and it's there that it got the name Clock Tower, because he named it the Clock Tower, obviously after the clock tower in the post office. Now he sold it. Many people will remember this. He sold it to Mr. Forrest, who owned other seniors buildings, and I believe most people assumed that it would continue to be a seniors residence. And then we discovered that Mr. Forrest was also in the land development business, and he decided that he would like to clear the way for a building to be put up on that site, and he wanted to redevelop the 4 stores to the south of the post office as well, in one big project. Obviously, because it was an historic building and it had been designated as so, I guess, by both the federal and the provincial, as well as our local council, he couldn't do that. He couldn't take the building down. So his concept that he suggested and promoted was that they would build, much like they did at the Hockey Hall of Fame, they would build around the established building, encompassing it in a larger complex. I think he originally started with the idea of 9 stories, and I think he, as time went on, he would take a couple stories off. But because of so many reasons, and we've discussed this in past interviews that you've had with me, for various reasons, that wasn't going to work out, and eventually he gave up. Now, one has to remember that Mr. Forrest wasn't going to run this new complex that was going to be built. His job was to get the town to allow this to happen, and then he would sell the rights to the land to a developer who I assume he had waiting to do this, but it didn't all work out for him. But again, I mean, a lot of people will probably remember, that the post office was the center. This is where you went. I mean, you went every day. We didn't get mail delivery until the late 30s, early 40s. Before then, you had to go down. You would have a box in the post office, and you would go down every day and pick up your mail, or maybe not every day. It depends on whether you got a lot of mail, I guess. But you would go down there, and this is where you discuss the topics of the day, as well as, of course, all the scandal that was going on in your streets, and and give your opinion about national events. So it was the center of Newmarket.
Talking about communication and just meeting to chat, which brings me to my next building before we go to your in from the cool walk. That reminds me of the old town hall. Now, we talked about it on previous shows. Somebody asked me there the other day, was the old town hall ever used as a jail? And they did hang somebody down there?
Well, there's 2 questions there. Well, first of all, yes, it was a jail. Many people will probably still remember that the jail was in the basement of that building. The police station was to the south of the building, so it was behind the building. It was convenient because the courts were also located in that building too, so they didn't have to take people very far in order to to be on trial. So yes, the answer to your question is yes, it was a jail at one time. Previous to that, we didn't really have a jail. People used to be locked up in any building that seemed to be somewhat secure. I've told you the story about how in 1837 in the rebellion, when they arrested all those people, they put them in the basement of what at that time was a Presbyterian church. And that's where they were kept. And your second question about whether they ever hung anybody there. Well, first of all, we have had people hung in this area. There's no doubt about that. I have never heard a story about people being hung in the marketplace. The town hall was originally created for two reasons. First of all, to have public meetings, and second of all, to serve as the indoor premises for the street market or the public market for Newmarket, and that's back in the very beginning. Obviously, the second floor of the town hall became the area courts. So, people's trials were held there, which is very convenient. But as I say, they always say that there were people that were hung outside Dine's Tavern, which is, of course, as most people know, it was on Eagle Street. The two people who were involved in the murder that took place there, rumor is, or the records seem to indicate that they were hung, if not right on the premises, very close to. But I'm not aware of anybody being hung, at the in the marketplace. I think by that time, people were still spectator sport. I think they wanted it to be done someplace where it wasn't quite as public as a public square.
On a brighter note, Richard, I would say I've heard that the In from the Cold walk is now verified with a date, and it's February 25th.
Yeah, February 25th. We do this every year, or I do this every year. It's been going on for quite a while. Great charity. For those people who don't know who or what In from the Cold is, they support people in need who need accommodation to, as the name implies, to get out of the cold. They also feed people and offer counseling and a lot of other things. Sadly, in our times, this is becoming more and more a necessity in our community. So every year we do a different topic. I guess I've been doing it for, about 7 or 8 years. So every year that we do a different topic, and this year decided that we would head over to the old Newmarket military camp, and we would do a tour of that whole area and talk about how the area has developed. Well, first of all, we would talk about the buildings that were there and sort of give a general history of the camp itself, and then we would talk about how it transformed into a subdivision, and how the houses grew out of the barracks that were there. A lot of those houses were old barracks and were just converted to housing after the war. So I'm pretty excited about that topic. I'm hoping people will be excited. Generally, people like the fact that the walks for In from the Cold are a little bit different from the ones that I generally do. And you're actually walking someplace. I was drawn to do this because the first year I walked, the 5 kilometers, and they have a nice route, but there's nothing along the route. Nobody was talking to anybody, or if you were talking to somebody, you were catching up on the local gossip. And somebody I was walking with said, "Gee, you know about history. Wouldn't it have been nice if you could, as we walked along, you could tell us a little bit about what we were seeing as we were walking along?" So the next year, this is exactly what we did. We obviously walked a shorter period of time, but we were gone longer than the people who were walking 5 kilometers. because we would stop, we'd talk about the building or the house and the history and whatever. And it proved very, very successful. So we've been doing a different topic every year. And this year is the military camp. So if there's anybody out there who thinks they would like to go on the tour with us, with the walk, they're going to be looking for you to make a contribution to In From the Cold, and in return, you'll get to walk with me and the group and learn a little bit of history about the old military camp.
Whereabouts was this military camp located, Richard?
Well, most people, the easiest way to explain to people is that it was part of it was located on the old fairgrounds, which is Shrigley, Gorham area of Newmarket. Most people would identify it probably by the Legion. There's a Newmarket Legion over there, and the Legion was the officers' mess that was built for the war effort. So yeah, so that's where it is. But it was much bigger, because what had happened was that, we talked in our previous show, Newmarket's first subdivision was located there, and for whatever reason, it never took off. The people who had bought all the land and were set to build all the houses went bankrupt, and so essentially what happened was the town got back to that land from the people who went bankrupt. So they decided to combine the land that originally was designated for a subdivision, Connaught. It was called Connaught. That was the name of the subdivision. The town decided that they would apply for a military camp, and they would combine that land with also with the land, the fairgrounds. And it's called the fairgrounds because it actually used to be a fair, a huge fair there. It used to have horse races. It was a pretty cool place. And the two together were combined for to build the military camp. Of course, after the military camp was back, the town had an agreement with the federal government that once they were closing the military camps, the town would have the opportunity to buy the land back for nothing, basically, and to develop it. And that's exactly what happened. My uncle, George Lusby, was the gentleman that was tasked, the architect who was tasked with turning the old buildings into to housing and to buildings that they could use, and that's exactly what they did.
Well, we're just about
that, you'll have to come on my walk.
Well, as long as you have some sort of warm beverages on the way, I think we can probably work that one out.
I think it'd be probably dangerous for me to let you drink.
Well, it's been always great talking to you, Richard, and learning a little bit more about the historic value of Newmarket. Can you tell the people out there how to get in contact with you, especially if they want to join you on the walk from the In From the Cold?
Well, I maintain I'm on
You're everywhere.
All the various social medias. You can email me at thehistoryhound@rogers.com. You can see me on YouTube. Again, just the History Hound. I'm on Facebook and on Twitter.
Everywhere.
Also, History Hound. Facebook is good because I write several times a day and put pictures from my archives on there, so it's a good place to go to see me. As far as joining our In From the Cold, it's a long and involved link to get there. But if you go to Facebook, I put the link on there. I'll link from there on Facebook to the site to sign up for the tours and to make your donation to In From the Cold. And again,
well, it's always
on In From the Cold, our group is called the History Hounders. I think kind of sticking with the theme of a hound, we're called the History Hound.
Are you ever going to get a hound as a mascot, like maybe a beagle?
I've always wanted a beagle. Unfortunately, I don't get an equal vote in my household, so we don't have a beagle. But I've always wanted one. Or what I'd really like is, one of those basset hounds with the long ears. But we don't always get what we want in life.
Well, it's always great to have you on the show as ever, Richard. Learn a little bit more about what's going on in the history of Newmarket. And I'll put in a good word for Santa for you. So you just might have Beagle or Basset Hound on your doorstep one day.
Yeah, no, that would be wonderful. I would love that. I'm not so sure my household would, but I would just love that. I may end up coming to live with you.
Well, thanks a lot, Richard. We hope to talk to you in the new year.
I appreciate your having me. Take care.
Thanks a lot. You've been listening to the Out and About Town Show on Shop FM 102.7. And a very, very special shout out to our producer, Gareth Stirrup. Thanks a lot for tuning in.